Welcome to Pirate Living Podcast, where we highlight ordinary people living extraordinary lives. These are pirates who take small, bold actions daily to create social change. Pirate life is all about rebelling and breaking the rules for good. Creating lasting social change starts by first breaking our inner rules. After all, the hardest rules to break are your own. The pirates we highlight have dedicated themselves to creating good trouble. Today on our podcast, we are sitting down with Dave Robinson. Dave is the owner of Work Your Stories, where Dave leads personal health and mindset rebellions by guiding people to overcome imposter syndrome, turn self-doubt into self-confidence, and finally face what's holding them back, themselves. Dave is also a sponsored professional obstacle course racing athlete, where he runs courses like Spartan, Tough Mudder, and the OCR World Championships. Dave, we would love for you to weave us the tale of your pirate journey. What started you on the course of becoming a modern day pirate, and what does it mean to you to be a pirate?
Ooh, great start. Great question. Happy to be on. Good to see y'all. What does it mean to be a pirate? I wouldn't say rebelling is the best word, but I have been choosing my battles wisely since I was a little kid, and always questioning why things are the way that they are. And I think I do a good job of picking up hypocrisy in myself and in other people, and in, especially as far as authority figures or school or governments or parents or whatever it may be. And I just started noticing things didn't add up from an early age all the time. And so because of that, I like to, and have since a kid, just carved my own path, danced my own dance, sung my own song, and largely didn't worry too much what other people thought, just did what I wanted to do. And, with no harm to anybody else, but just followed my dreams and passions. And I think because of that, because I don't necessarily fall into society's definition of success, or, the whole, I guess, American dream of go to school, buy a house, get married, have kids, yada, yada, yada. And before you're like 25, because I didn't do that, I feel like I'm continuing to rebel and continue to carve my own pirate path. So,
Awesome.
Yeah. Wait, I have a good question for you. So yes,
Perfect.
You've been rebelling and creating your own pirate path, and along your pirate journey, a friend called Petey the Pirate, and I would like to know a little bit about this friend, the pirate.
So Petey the Pirate was a pet duck that my one of three roommates had in college. So I went to James Madison University. It was a probably 15,000 kids or student school about 2.5 hours west of Richmond in the mountains. And my junior year, I think it was, we lived off campus in a really crappy apartment, just college apartment. And my roommates upstairs were a lot more of the partying type than my roommate and I downstairs. So they had a party one night, and I woke up downstairs, Saturday morning, whatever time, popped in the bathroom, brushed my teeth, all that good stuff. And I noticed that there's sound coming from the bathtub. So I draw the curtains back, and there's a live duckling just swimming back and forth in this bathtub. And, it's 9:30 in the morning. I may or may not have had a couple adult beverages the night before. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, we got a duck in here. And, lo and behold, one of the guys from one of our friend or our roommates upstairs, one of his friends had some fraternity thing, and they like were, had these ducks, and he forgot the duck. And so now my roommate Brandon adopted the duck. So we named the duck Petey the Pirate Duck. And Petey grew up with Brandon and Carl upstairs and in our little house. He was totally afraid of stairs. He never went downstairs. He was super afraid of feet, like toes wigged him out big time. But Petey grew up to be like a yellow duck, like a yellowish white Peking duck is what they were. And so we'd walk him on, a harness on the quad. We'd have him hang out with us at parties. He became a very dear friend to all of us. And it's puppies are great. I'm a big puppy fan, but there's just something special about a duck. Something special about a duck hanging out with you at a party, sitting on the couch, watching TV, just like us four watching football on Sunday and Petey's in the middle, so we had a good time with Petey.
So since you named the duck Petey the Pirate, is this like the first time thinking about pirates in your life, or had you pretended as a kid, like were pirates to you? Did you ever pretend to be pirate?
Yeah, so I'm on the East Coast of the States, and we're very near the Outer Banks, which is a chain of barrier islands off the coast of North Carolina. And I've been going down to the Outer Banks, which is about 3.5 to 5 hours, depending on where you go, since I was a kid. And we go down there to go to the beach for a week, as a family. And as soon as I got my driver's license, I would go down there and camp all the time. And this is where a lot of pirate activity actually happened. Like Blackbeard the Pirate was down here in the Outer Banks, and they have a ton of, as you get further down into, and like onto the barrier islands, there's this island called Ocracoke, which was a big hangout for pirates. And like you can read about this in history books. It's like Ocracoke, North Carolina. And so they've always got, they always had pirate flags and pirate chains and pirate, like the whole 9 yards. So I had a pirate keychain and was very akin to pirate lore. Also, one of my favorite movies when I was 13 or 14 was Pirates of the Caribbean when that came out. And there's a running inside joke in my family that at the time, I was 13 years old, Pirates of the Caribbean comes out, Johnny Depp and, whoever else was in it, Keira Knightley or whatever. And I proclaimed it to be the greatest movie of all time. Now, my family doesn't let me live that down, but, I still, at the time, it was the greatest movie I had ever seen, and thus was the greatest movie of all time. So Pirates of the Caribbean, Ocracoke Island, Hatteras, all that good stuff. So the pirate blood runs deep.
Do you have a favorite pirate?
Favorite pirate? That's a good question. I'm going to go with Blackbeard. Just because he's close to home. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but there were a lot of cool pirates, and I was a history major, in college, and so I really love the idea of explorers, and pirates in many ways, though they're not necessarily exploring or discovering places, though maybe some did or some were, but they were still adventuring, and going to far places with, very little population and seeing stuff, doing things. So that always was attractive to me. And in many ways, I still try to adventure as often as I can and go to faraway lands and all that good stuff.
Tell me about that spirit of...
I think I cut out, so I'm going to Karan, go.
Karan, hit it.
Sorry about this, anyone listening. We're having, it's Wi-Fi Wednesday. It's fun. I just want to talk about the spirit of adventure, and the impact that that's had on your life, and where has it taken you?
Yeah, awesome question. I really tried as a young adult to hone in on the things that were important to me. And right out of college, I had a job as a strength and conditioning coach at the University of Richmond. And so I was in a gym constantly, all day, every day, pretty much. And I had zero freedom or flexibility of time or income. That was the only summer I didn't go camping down in the Outer Banks because I had football groups the whole summer getting ready for the season and stuff. So early on, I realized that having that freedom was very important to me. And I was willing to sacrifice a lot of other things for that, like stability or a regular paycheck or, a lot of the 9-to-5 job and things of that nature. So today, and it's been for a while, my goals or my inspirations are to travel, train, and inspire other people to live the best versions of their own lives, whatever that is. And so I earlier this year, I was very fortunate to spend about a week in Austin, Texas, and another week camping in Sedona with some good friends. And then the following week camping outside of Zion National Park in southern Utah. So I spent 14 straight days sleeping on the ground in a tent, which was amazing. I had spent 11 days without a shower, though I did jump into 4 bodies of water during that 11-day time frame. So it's not a full 11-day no shower deal, but it was still technically no hot water for 11 days. Things like that. And I really love getting out into open expanses. I really love getting into mountains, moving my body in those places and being overcome with the glorious silence that comes with being up in the mountains, and there's a lot of grandeur and I see a lot of beauty in nature. I see a lot of God in nature, and traveling allows me to go and see those places and experience those places. And oftentimes the best places are hard to get to. So I like literally and figuratively going the extra mile to get to those spots way back up in XYZ, so I definitely follow the call of adventure anywhere I can.
Going back to the rebellion part that about at the beginning, what social rebellion have you started to start?
What social rebellion have I started or would like to start? I'd like to think that I help people rebel against what society says they quote unquote should do. I work with a lot of people professionally and am a gasser for a lot of my friends, an inspirer or a pusher for a lot of my friends to, make those transitions. And a lot of people are in a position now, especially after the environment we've been in for the past year and a half, where now the possibility of working from home or the possibility of having a different perspective on what's really important and how people could be spending their time. I've had a lot of conversations in the past, and I continue to have a lot of conversations on helping people to step into what they know that they could do if they weren't scared, or if they weren't fearful about what other people would think, or about how their life would change for a period of time. So a lot of people get stuck doing the same thing and are afraid of that change. And it's not my job to figure out what that change is per se, or to push one person in one way or another. But a lot of people are, to kind of keep with the mountain analogy, a lot of people are sitting on top of that ridge, on that ridge line, and they're just stuck, afraid to make a decision, straddling the ridge. And it's either like, okay, like I just try to help people get more clear on what they really, really want, so that I can just give them that little tap to get them going over this way, or over that way. And then they start to, oh, okay, now I can do it. And, that snowballs. So my social rebellion would be to get people out of their stuckness, get people out of their mundaneness, get people out of their regularness, and get people into doing what they want to do and how they want to do it.
Yeah, I think that really, I'm going to speak for Kristin and but I think that really speaks to us. I mean, the thing that brought us together doing this Pirate Living podcast is, last year in the middle of, or at the beginning, I would say, of this pandemic, we both quit our corporate safe jobs and went all in on ourselves and started our own
Awesome.
businesses. And I know for myself, I was waiting for the right time the whole time. Like, oh, if I just have this many clients or if I'm just making this much money. And really, it was being home, being in that first lockdown, really gave a chance to pause. And as we started making plans to go back to what life was, realizing that, man, I can't go back to that. I can't do that anymore. And, some might say the worst time to quit a safe and financially secure job to start a business. And yet, really, we talk about permission a lot on this podcast, giving ourselves permission to go in on what we want to do and chase those passions. And so it sounds like the work that you're doing is helping people give themselves that permission, right? Because it doesn't come from anybody else. The permission is not coming from you. It's got to come from within. And it is scary to make those changes and to live on the edge of the map, right? And to follow our compass and to do the things that we're passionate about. So is this what you do with your business, Work Your Stories? And tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I'm a full-time storywork coach. So I did a ton of health and wellness work over the past 4 years after I quit my financial planning job and went into did my own thing. So had made that same leap, made a lot of mistakes, learned a lot of lessons, did a lot of things right. And, here we are. But with that transition back in the beginning of the year, in the beginning of the pandemic, I found that so many people, myself included, were feeling loss, or we're feeling grief, or we're feeling fear and uncertainty. And story work, I've been coached by the story work process since beginning of 2017. I just didn't know that that's what it was called. I would have calls with Mark would tell me to write shit down, and he'd do the thing, right, that we know what it is now. And before, I was just getting on calls with Mark, and holy crap, now I see things differently. Now I'm having a different perspective. Now I feel a lot better about my shifts or the direction I want to go, because I created that space, and that clarity was created. So I saw that in myself. I saw that happen with my peers. And then I saw that when I started to do storywork sessions. And I really found storywork to be the through line between everything. The words we say out loud, the words we say inside our own heads, how we breathe, how we respond physiologically and emotionally to things in our lives. That's matters so much. And the healthy holistic habits also matter. I still do that. And yet I found that the story work helped tie all those things together so well. And so now, for the most part, I lead with that story work, and we clear the space. We help people get creative. And then folks do go into that healthy holistic habits program. And I love coaching, all that stuff. I love coaching workout programming. I love coaching nutrition stuff. I love coaching the other 23 hours of the day and how to optimize all that. And yet it works so much better when people deal with the head and the heart first. So Work Your Stories is dealing with the head and the heart.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what kind of people are you working with?
All different folks. I've started working, or have been working for the past, I guess, like 9 months now, with an addiction recovery center, so a sober home, and working with a lot of folks who are in various stages of their recovery or various stages of an active addiction. And so that's been a jumping off the deep end with this stuff for sure. But I'm working with a lot of people who are transitioning or thinking about transition to one thing or another, working with a lot of people who are dealing with things from their past that are coming up, people in relationship strife, or just not optimizing well. And I picked up a client last night who basically said, listen, like a lot of things are going well. And from the outside, a lot of things are going well. And yet, he still feels like he's leaving a lot on the table. There's still that feeling of mediocrity with him, and it doesn't sit well for him. And so, I'm I'm helping him with his accountability and his direction and some knowledge on a couple other little areas. And we're going to clear some space for him to get creative and to, what he says, optimize and fulfill his potential. And so I love people who are willing to do the work. I love working with people who have made the decision to better themselves. And that's been, that wasn't always the case, especially in my old career as a financial planner. I would have to I spent time trying to convince my idiot friends who were just like me at the time, to don't spend $50 at the bar. Like, please save this. It's gonna be so valuable for you one day. And like, I don't make any money on this, but save your money. And, so I beat my head against the wall doing that in the past. And so now it's working with people who want to change, and I help them with that change.
Yeah, I'd like to know more about your own transition from financial planner to what you're doing now in coaching and story work. What did that look like for you? And what was was there a pivotal moment where you knew you needed to make a change? Was it gradual? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I worked at U of R, University of Richmond for a year, and then I got into financial planning, looking for that freedom and flexibility of time and income, and ended up in the business for 7 or 8 years. And for the first, 3 or 4, it was all in. And then it started to just, started to grate on me a little bit. And I was grinding like hard. Not a 9-to-5, not a salary position, just like really working to build up a network and a base and everything else. And I frankly, I burned myself out really bad and just started to hate it. And I had been getting back into health and wellness for myself after a couple of years of being out of the game to focus on the career. And as I started making progress, as I started posting about races or starting to get back into things, people would ask questions. And ultimately got down to the point where about a year and a half before I ended up leaving, I decided to launch a business, just doing it on the side. So I did just workout programming and some nutrition guidelines on the side. People had questions, cost this, sign up, yada, yada. And I would do both. I was in my office doing financial planning stuff and, working on the side business at the same time. And I did have a pivotal moment. I had the inklings for a while. Like I had like the rumblings, and then they were starting to whisper, and then they started to get louder and louder, and I was just ignoring it. And I was telling myself and my clients that like, well, I'm going to be here for the long term, because that's what I really thought. That's what I honestly thought, even though deep down, I hated it and knew that I could do something else that I would like more. Right. So I got bit by a spider. I don't know how or where. It was either, I think it was in my office. I was, again, like working my ass off. And so I would just be exhausted. So I had a pillow and a blanket in my office. I used to take naps in my office. And I'd just like get up, or I'd like make a coffee, chug the coffee, lay down to sleep, wake up like 30 minutes later and like be jazzed and like start, typing away or calling away. And so I get bit by the spider. I'm on this nap. It's like 10 a.m. I put my elbow on my desk and I'm like, man, that hurt. Wonder what that is. And then by a couple hours later, by like 1:30, I've got my suit off and my sleeve rolled up, and I'm like walking around to people in the office. I was like, does this look weird to anybody? like, can somebody check this out? And then that night I actually had my first public talk about health and wellness. Like it was about, I think it was, I don't know what it was about, but something in the health and wellness. And it was at a local health food store here. There was a lot of my friends and family came out. There's 30, 35 people or whatever. And I have this talk, And at the end, people are asking me questions and stuff. And I'm blanking out, and I'm like sweating and my arms up here. I'm at a 9 out of 10 pain. My buddy comes up to me. He's like, dude, you don't look good. Like, you need to take care of yourself. Right. I had another friend come up and convince me to go to the doctor, go to the hospital. So I go to the hospital and they send me home. They either think I ruptured my tricep tendon or got bit by a bug. And I was like, well, those are two very different things. But regardless, they gave me like 800 milligrams of ibuprofen and some over-the-counter antibiotic, and were like, come back in 48 hours if it's no better. So I'm like, all right, you're the doc, right? And this is, again, coming down to the rebellion stuff. Like, this was BS. Like, I knew I needed help and they didn't give it to me. And so I was like, all right, I listened to you. And I go home and I can't sleep. I'm puking. I like have a fever, like whole 9 yards. So I get up the next day and I'm still just like trying to gut this thing out, because now I've been in the emergency room once and I know it's going to be expensive to go back, and which sucks because that's America for you.
Yeah.
You know, like I can't go back. You know, you're in Canada. Yeah. You could probably just
I go as many times as I want. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I'm over here thinking about my bill before and I'm like puking and like, but maybe it's just, so I have lunch with a friend of mine, and she's an orthopedist, and she's like, I don't think you tore your tricep tendon. You need to go back to the doctor. Yeah. Right. And so I end up going back, and they admit me immediately. I have like 14 bags of antibiotics and IV fluids coming in. Like, they're like, sums up, so they admit me overnight. They admit me the second night. They finally figured it out. They got the swell or the inflammation under control. And so it's Saturday night, right? And it's Saturday at 12:30 a.m. So it just turned to Sunday. The nurse came in, did their rounds. I'm hooked up to machines. I know I'm supposed to go home to like Sunday, right? Tomorrow, which has just turned to today, right? And I'm laying in bed, in this hospital bed, and I can't go back to sleep. And I'm just sitting there thinking, and I'm like, oh, it's Sunday now. Cool, I get to go home. Wait, that means tomorrow's Monday and I got to go to work. Maybe I'll just stay here. And it was like lightning bolt literally flashed across my brain like a neon sign. It was like, dude, you want to stay in the hospital bed over going to work? Get out, get out, get out. And it was like this red flashing alarm, like, you need to quit your job and do something else. And the next day, that Sunday I went home, Monday I went to work. And as soon as I walked in the door, I knew that it was a matter of weeks or a month or two before I can get my affairs in order and peace out with dignity and, to be fair with everybody and all my clients and everything. But that decision was made at that point because I saw myself working another 30 years and building a nice, being 55, 60 with a nice career and, having a good amount of money and made a, nice little career, but I didn't love it. I didn't love it. I knew I wouldn't love it. And I knew I would only be partially happy because I would always feel like I left something on the table for what I was actually created to do or what I'm actually capable of doing. And I had to figure that out.
Yeah, that's such a great story. And I'm only a little disappointed that the spider wasn't radioactive and you don't have superpowers. And and I do feel like that spider gave you a little bit of superpowers. It gave you that clarity of yeah, I'd rather lay in this hospital bed for a little longer than go back to work. And I remember with my old job, driving to work and thinking, well, if I got in an accident on my way to work, then I would get the day off. Right. Yeah. And it's like, man, how is that the way to live? And I feel like so many people in this world are doing that, right? They're settling or chasing, that paycheck and that security. And, the security, it's addictive. Especially if you've got family, you've got kids, you've got a mortgage, you've got all the things. That security is it's addictive. How was it for you actually letting go of that security once you made that decision and traveling on the edges of the maps?
Yeah. Well, in a way, I had never really had that security because I was working for myself. You know, I had good years and bad years, and in financial planning, like if I had a whale case, like there was a case that was 50% of my year, and if I had one of those, it was a good year. And if I didn't get one of those, like I was not crushing it. You know, frankly, had I been making more money, I might have stayed, you know, and I might have been in a position where, you know, it was that quote unquote no brainer to keep doing what I was doing. But it still was a grind. And so I just had this thought of, well, if I'm grinding now, I might as well grind for something I want to do, and something that, you know, I grind for myself completely, not something else, you know. But there were a lot of periods of instability and a lot of periods of not having the ability to quote unquote do the things I necessarily wanted to do, or you know, I haven't bought a place. You know, I moved to Mexico, right? I moved to Mexico in the beginning of 2020, right before the pandemic, and it was an incredible opportunity. I was living in San Diego at the time, and I probably only had a couple more months of being able to live in San Diego before I was going to move back home to Richmond, you know, where I am now. So I took that opportunity to go from spending $2,500 a month to $250 a month and start to build a business in Mexico and build that lifestyle out. And, you know, the pandemic happened and I came back here and things took off the way that they did. But, you know, I've never had a 9-to-5 job. So I've never had the security of a paycheck. So it wasn't that hard for me to just continue doing what I had been doing. So I guess I can't really give the perspective of letting go of that security completely, but I can say that living without it is totally fine if you're, you know, able and willing to understand that some days and months and weeks are going to be better than others. Just like life, you know. February and March weren't good business months, right? April was great. So, you know, it's just like things ebb and flow, and a lot of people need that, you know, steady every 2 weeks. At the end of the year, it'll average out on my end, and so it's all good. Yeah.
So with that, and bringing back to like the racing that you do, how has sport and fitness helped you to be more comfortable with being uncomfortable? Because that's really what you're talking about, is even with your financial planning job, you know, you had to get comfortable with being uncomfortable without that steady security. How has fitness helped you with that?
I feel like that if people are uncomfortable because they want to be with an end result in mind, it's a lot easier to do. So I grew up in team sports and now compete on an individual sport, but I grew up playing soccer. And during your question, I thought back to like preseasons, you know, like preseason training camps and whatnot. And, you know, soccer is a first love of mine. It's the beautiful game. I love it. I'll cry watching it. Of tears of joy and sadness. I mean, it's the entire spectrum of human emotions in 90 minutes, and especially with a team that you supported from childhood or your nation or something like that, right? But for me, it was the sacrifice that we gave, you know, on playing on a high level youth team, the sacrifices in the beginning of the season, you know, the gut busting training sessions and sprints and whatnot, where all of us were working towards a common goal. And it turns out that, oh, well, it works, you know, making yourself uncomfortable and putting the work in works. You know, we started winning, right? And we started being able to outlast people, and we were already bought in, and that allowed us to buy in even more, you know. And so I think for myself, when I started to see the results of the hard work, that was probably the first place I saw that, you know, for myself, like, oh, I'm going to work hard and cool things are going to come from me working hard. And if it's getting uncomfortable for something I want to do, or something that I love to do, or something that leads me towards something that I want to do or love to do, then I'm because of fitness, I'm happy to do that because I know that that often translates.
Mm-hmm.
It often translates. And it's different with work oftentimes, you know, especially in the sales world. Like you could do a ton of work and then ultimately the prospective customer or client doesn't say yes, and you don't get rewarded for that work. And I know that can be super frustrating. And yet with fitness, and because it is an art and it's largely a science, if I do X, Y often occurs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I go run these hill sprints twice a week for the next 16 weeks, as much as it sucks every time I'm doing it at the beginning of the, you know, hour versus at the end of the hour, I know I did it. I know it's done. It feels great because I accomplished something. And at the end of that 12 or 16 weeks, I'm going to be able to run up a mountain a hell of a lot easier. And it's going to feel really, really good getting to that finish line. Mm-hmm. And, you know, ultimately that growth comes from doing the hard thing and making myself uncomfortable.
Mm.
Yeah. With the getting uncomfortable, you have the nickname on your tracksuit, Chop, and also the line "Keep Chippin'." So that within that comes small, bold actions that need to be taken. What small, bold actions have you taken?
What small, bold actions have I taken? Well, I mean, I think everything comes down to a first step, right? And what I've learned with health and wellness is the consistency matters above all. Like it's way better to take minimum effective doses on a daily basis than it is to go in on Monday and hammer your legs and go in on Tuesday and do it again. And by Wednesday, you're like, holy shit, you're dragging. And then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, you don't show up again, you know? And that's what I see happen so often with people. And those small daily wins do add up. So I made a commitment to myself a little over 5 years ago to, on a daily basis, make a concerted effort to set aside time to better myself physically. And I called it the Keep Your Streak Alive Challenge. And it started with wanting to work out every day for a year. And, you know, that was an impossible goal at the time, but it was a goal that I could only do one step at a time, one day at a time. And if I looked at
I think you and I are good.
Okay.
We lost Dave.
So I think people.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
All right.
There we go.
I was like, is it me?
Joys of technology.
All right. So where did you leave off?
I don't know. Where did I leave off?
Your daily challenge.
Yeah, daily challenge.
You had to do it one day at a time.
Yep. So it's one day at a time. And ultimately, I'm 5 years in. I'm almost 2,000 days in on my streak. And that's every single day of setting aside time to better myself physically. And some days it's just a walk. Some days it's 20 minutes in the sauna. Some days it's, you know, oh shit, I forgot to do it. And I get out of bed and I do a vinyasa flow and I'm like, all right, I fucking did it. You know, most days I get after it, or I'm really moving the needle for myself. But ultimately over the past 5 years, I'm fitter, healthier, happier than I've ever been. And it's been just one day at a time, just one day at a time. And, you know, if I tried to do it more than that, like more than one day at a time, I would set myself back, and it's impossible. So I think just those little efforts can really stack up. And the chopper Dave came from, so for a long time I said chip, right? Like just chipping away, right? And somebody said, you know, it's time to stop chipping and start chopping. And I was like, bingo, let's take some big hacks out of that. So now Chopper Dave is taking an axe as opposed to a chisel, and really starting to make big leaps forward in certain areas, which comes from laying that long foundation.
Yeah. And so tell us more about your 3-week Design Your Change course.
Awesome. Yeah. So this was a way for me to start getting the concepts that I talk about and that I do in my individual coaching and have people get an intro. It's an intro course to language and affecting positive change in yourself and personal development. So week 1 is about changing your relationship to the things that you've experienced in the past. Week 2 is about changing your present through actions, habits, and identity shifts. So that's when I do get into a lot of the healthy, holistic habits and how can we actually move the needle very, very quickly. And lo and behold, it's often not that complicated, right? Week 3 is my favorite week because it's about designing your future, designing the change you want moving forward. And so I ran the course with the intention of doing it one time, right? Like one time, here it is, it's $100. Whoever wants in is in. It's three hour-long Zoom calls, group Zoom calls, week 1, week 2, week 3. And people loved it. And I loved it. I thought it was cool as hell. I was getting a lot of positive feedback and a lot of positive results very quickly for folks who weren't necessarily, or who maybe had been working on a lot of these problems a long time, and weren't necessarily used to seeing results quickly that were meaningful and substantial and lasting, right? Cognitive shifts are typically a relatively permanent thing, or at least they send you off in a different direction, right? Like once your perspective changes, it's hard to unsee stuff, right? It's hard to put the blinders back on and like, nope, turn this off. I don't want to know it. Like people do it. People refuse the call all the time. But it's hard to do that. And you always have that like, yeah, I know. I'm just ignoring it. So it was a good eye opener for people and has been a great way for people to get in and get some coaching and have it be at a more cost-effective rate for a lot of folks. So I'm putting on the next course, June 14th, I believe is the second Monday in June. And yeah, it's a fun one. It really, really is a fun one. Is that June 14th? Nope, it's not. It's June 8th.
June 8th.
No. Yeah, I think it's June 8th. That's it.
This is a monthly, right, for the rest?
Yeah, I'm going to do it monthly. I took May off because I'm going to be traveling the next 2 Mondays in May. And so the folks who signed up for May were all cool with doing it in June. And so we're just going to do it in June. And I think that's the cool part about creating stuff and, doing your own thing is you can largely do what you want to do and do what works out well for everybody. So
cool. And where can our listeners go to find out more about you and your program?
Workyourstories.com is my main website. And then I'm on Instagram at getstrappedstaystrapped.
Cool.
Yeah. So what recommendations would you give to our listeners about starting their own pirate in their own small, bold actions?
Starting their own pirate what?
Pirate life.
Starting their own pirate life. Start small and dream big, right? There's a great quote, Jim Rohn, maybe something along the lines of people underestimate what they can accomplish in a day, a week, a month, a year, and vastly or overestimate what they can accomplish in that short time frame and vastly underestimate what they can do in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And I see that being 100% true for myself, for clients. Anytime I do a vision casting exercise, and I've been doing something along these lines, like the perfect day or 3-year goals or 5-year goals or 1-year goals for, 6 or 7 years at this point. And I rarely accomplish my 1-year goals. I very, very rarely accomplish my 1-year goals. I often don't accomplish my 90-day goals. But my bigger picture 3-year goals are typically done in 18 months, 18 to 20 months, and so I've gotten a lot better at seeing what mountain I want to get to and totally being open to how I get there, and just following the path that seems best at the time or that is open at the time or that, is the way I think it's going to be at the time and ultimately getting to that bigger mountain, just maybe not the way that was the most obvious or the one that I thought. So have people, anyone listening, just get clear on the big things, on really, really for real, what do you want to do? And just start chipping away at it. on a daily basis, minimum effective dose, take one foot in front of the other, whatever you want to say, but just start slowly working at it, and you'll find yourself X number of time frames down the road, a lot further up towards that goal.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people to look back behind them, right? As I'm looking up ahead at that mountain, right? Every run, I did this run yesterday. It's a long hill. It's 90 seconds up, right? It's 90 seconds of a sprint. Like we ain't like just slowly walking or jogging up this hill. Like we're trying to get up this hill, and halfway through, I'll look up and I'll be like, fuck, man, this is like a long way to go. But then anytime I think that, I always look back and I'm like, oh yeah, I've come a long way too. And I think people forget to look back and see how far they've come personally, individually, professionally, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, all those things. And they're solely focused on either where they are now, not being where they want to be, or where they want to go, not being there now, without realizing there's a long way back there where you came from. And to appreciate that and acknowledge that, and realize that in a month or a year or 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, you're going to do the same damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get there.
Yeah, that's great advice. I do like that, looking back, because we forget how far we've come. And I had a conversation about this with a client this morning who was having some challenges on, where she was, 2 years ago, and where she is now is huge. And we were really focusing on like that. Look at where you've come. We can't just focus on the mountain ahead of us. With one step at a time, and man, we're like halfway up there already, right?
Yeah.
That's great advice.
Yeah. And I've been in races where literally, long races in the mountains where I've started to lose it mentally, or maybe I bonked. I just didn't eat enough. And my body isn't responding the way I want. Like my legs are lead. And I have these conversations with myself. I'm like, all right, just like get to that tree.
Mm-hmm.
Get to that tree and make another decision. Like, are you going to quit? Like maybe we'll DNF once we get to that tree, and I'll like walk the 10 steps and I'll get to the tree and I'll just have myself a little pity party and be like, all right, let's go to that rock. See that rock up there? Just get to that rock. And like, after a minute, somebody passes and says something, or you turn a corner and now you're going downhill and you're like, all right, I can do this, and just stay in the game, stay in the game, keep taking those little steps forward. And it's okay to not have that, not be able to see the big picture, to not feel great about it at all times. Right. Sometimes you just got to get to that next like lamppost and keep moving forward.
Totally. All right. Before we sign off, important question for you, Dave. Do you know any good pirate jokes?
Oh gosh. Do I know any good pirate jokes? I feel like I was prepped with this, like come ready with a pirate joke, and I forgot. So the short answer is no. And I love a good like arg pun, So if anybody's got like I'm happy to hear a good pirate joke. I'd love to learn a good pirate joke from the pirate queens. Is that possible?
We're always prepared.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's hear it.
All right. So why did the pirate buy an eye patch?
Why?
Because he couldn't afford an iPad.
Love it.
Crickets.
Love it. Crickets. No, that's good. Here's where my first thought was. I was like, but they have all that booty and the bounty. Like, I feel like they can get an iPad. That's good.
The thing about good pirate jokes is they're always really bad.
That's true. Entirely. That's awesome. This was fun, y'all. This was super fun. I really appreciate y'all having me on here.
Yeah, it was great having you and getting to know you and hearing your story, and so much great advice for our listeners for making some changes. And if they want to take that further, to join your 3-week Design Your Change course, which sounds pretty awesome.
Heck yeah. I appreciate it, y'all. Thank you.